Welcome to the Tricord Advisors podcast, where we answer life's hard questions to help you make smart decisions with your money. I'm Jeremiah Lee, and this is Randy Barkley. We're both certified financial planners. I'm also a California licensed attorney. All right, today we are talking about the markets, and markets are always different, but we have a unique moment with what's called the Mega Cap 8. You probably heard the FANG stocks.
Is that a new rock and roll group?
It is, yeah, the Mega Cap 8. Yeah, you can see them in concert. They'll be here all month. Now, there used to be the FANG stocks, people would call them. They would, Facebook.
The brick. Remember
Amazon.
the brick?
Right, the brick was the different countries. So now we've come to what people are starting calling the Mega Cap 8. And the reason they're highlighting these is it's these companies have gotten so large, Apple being one of them. Apple has gotten so large with their market cap, the size of their company, that whatever happens to Apple, good or bad, kind of happens to everybody because they impact the indexes so much. And the examples that we wanted to talk about is kind of what's happened year to date this year. And so year to date, the Dow Jones Industrial Average, a lot of the manufacturing companies, it's about a 1.
So the Dow Jones, just to clarify, the Dow Jones is made up of 30 stocks, and it is equally weighted. So the impact of the mega cap stocks doesn't have the same impact on those 30 stocks as they do like on the S&P 500.
So the Dow Jones has returned from year to date 1.7%. So basically flat. Not much has happened there. The S&P 500, the same period, is right about 16%.
So what's the difference? Why
hugely different? And it's these mega cap stocks that they're so large, they've pulled the whole thing up. And some of these have done phenomenal. So let's talk about some of these. Meta, which is Facebook, they've had roughly 150% return.
Yeah, I mean they got sold off dramatically last year, and all of a sudden they've done some changes, and obviously the revenue flow.
Right, and for a company to have 150% return over the course of a year or part of a year generally has no impact on it's a very minor impact on an index, an index that has 500 stocks total. However, some of these companies are so big, like Meta, they've become so large that their contribution to that is actually pulling it up meaningfully. So the Mega Cap 8, when we talk about these, there's Google, which trades Alphabet, but it's the Google company, Amazon, Apple, Meta, which is Facebook, Microsoft, Netflix, NVIDIA, and Tesla. Those are kind of the group right now. They're just becoming enormous. And it's not entirely them that have just pulled this up. However, generally, to move from 1.7% return on the Dow to a 16% on the S&P, the vast majority of that difference is these 8 stocks, these 8 stocks only.
And I think the biggest issue is, what do you look at for a benchmark? So the S&P 500 is a very common benchmark. And if you look at your portfolio and you say, well, I'm not up 16%.
Yeah, I didn't get 16% this year. What's going on?
The issue really comes down to diversification. So if your holdings are broadly diversified, you may have those stocks. In fact, you probably do, but they're probably not concentrated where they are in the S&P 500. So maybe your return is more like 5 to 10% this year and not 16%.
Yep.
But at the same point in time, if you concentrate your investment into these narrow band of stocks, when they do correct, it's going to be hurtful.
Yeah. Well, and to that comment, if someone had bought, say, Tesla, year to date, move forward, it's been great. They've had a really good year. Tesla last year, I think they lost 70% of their value at one time.
Down a lot.
So if they put all their eggs in that basket and said, "Hey, Tesla to the moon, let's do it," they'd have lost 70% of the principal. That's a massive amount to come back from. However, had they owned it this year and this year only, they would have been great. They'd have a great run.
So I mean, we use it FOMO, so the fear of missing out. I mean, people have a tendency to invest based on their emotions, and it really always comes back to is broad diversification and what's your cost going in. If you're at the very top end of the valuation, then you're probably going to be disappointed over time.
Well, the question we had this week is, what do you do now?
Right.
These have had stellar runs, a phenomenal moment. Will they keep going? Maybe.
Well, nothing goes up forever. I mean, logically, your emotion, your emotion from your intellect, your emotion, it's hard for you to step out or hard to, because that's going to go, like I said, fear of missing out. It's going to continue to go up.
It's going to keep going.
Well, logic tells you nothing goes up forever.
Right. And the question that we look at, many people do is will these come back down, or the rest of the companies in the economy, will they start slowly pulling up?
It's what we call a broader breadth. In other words, will will those stocks, those 8 stocks, basically, will it raise the water level?
Mhm.
Will all boats rise because of what they've done within that economy?
Yeah.
Right.
And to be determined. We're not here to kind of tell you what's going to happen, but it's just been a really interesting market this last year.
It has.
Because of these 8 stocks, and it's not over. I mean, these will continue. We've seen a lessening of the impact of these 8 stocks as they're cooling off a bit, and it looks like others are starting to rise, but that could just be a moment.
Yeah, and I think the key issue is be really careful about your fundamentals, and that's what we look at here, is not to be sidetracked or not be, all of a sudden be pulled in a certain direction because these particular band of stocks are doing that much better. Now, our investments are obviously for a lifetime, and we're looking at diversification, and you cannot put all of your eggs in one basket, so to speak.
Yep.
And in this particular season, you'd love to have 100% return on your holdings, and that's kind of I guess play it. I mean, from an emotional standpoint. But at the end of the day, you're taking on an inordinate amount of risk.
Yep. No, that's right. It really is. So stay tuned. We're going to talk a little bit. We're going to shift our conversation and talk about wealth transfers. There's a massive amount of money that's going to move from baby boomers to the next generation. And what do you do with that? How do you handle that as either a baby boomer or someone who might be receiving that? So stay tuned for our next section.
We'll be right back.
Welcome back. We're in this segment going to talk about wealth transfer. So Randy, you came up with a really interesting statistic on the amount of money that's moving from baby boomers to the next generation.
Yeah, it is a massive amount of capital. So over 78 trillion, not a B, a T, $1 trillion is going to transfer from baby boomers to whatever that next generation is. Now, to give you an idea of how much that is, it's 15 times more than what our grandparents, my grandparents, and transferred to my parents transferred to us. So we've had this huge capitalization that has occurred over the last 30 years or so. And this now is sitting in the hands of baby boomers.
Yep.
And eventually it's going to transfer somewhere.
That's right. And some of it is invested stocks and bonds and things like that. Some of it's also just real estate.
Right.
We've had a number of folks that their parent generation, or even currently the baby boomer generation, will pass away. And then that next generation walks into paid for real estate.
Right.
And it used to be maybe they bought the house for $300,000. Here in Southern California, that wasn't an odd item. But now they're walking to a house that's $1 million or more of value, as well as people have stocks and whatnot. So what we're talking about today is what is wealth? Like what do you do with wealth? Either when you are in your 80s and 90s and you have enough, you have plenty, or when you're in your 60s or so and you're receiving this amount of money. What does it mean to you? And we'll get a little philosophical, but I kind of want to start with some of the benefits. There's some real tangible benefits, and one is financial security.
Sure.
People who don't have enough to pay their mortgages, to pay rent, to buy food, it takes care of all of that. The next layer, I think that's on top of that, is the financial freedom. Mm-hmm. If you don't want to work at a certain job, you can have the freedom to change.
And I just want to kind of philosophically, financial freedom means a lot of things to a lot of people and a lot of differences, but what twists it typically is that greed factor. And a lot of people will leverage their financial assets in order to accomplish more.
Yeah.
And they don't have to, but they'll do it because they think more is better.
Yeah.
Right.
And there's more to experience. Say someone wants to travel and they want to travel to Europe, and they want to do it every year, and they consume, they use up their resources. There's others, and I think what you're kind of pointing at is, they've worked hard, they have plenty, they'll never run out of money, but they want more in the bank. They want more zeros after that number, so they keep working.
We can, without divulging people and their circumstances, we've had people we've talked to. I mean, I'm thinking of the one that you had, where he had a plane, he had a boat. And clearly through his financial plan, they were going through this money pretty rapidly. And you showed him at certain points on the plan where this was now going to start eating into his principal, and to the point where it's going to jeopardize. And so instead of making some kind of key decisions, what he did is he said, it means I can keep my boat and my plane up until this point. Yeah. It really kind of missed the point, didn't it?
Yeah, no, it did. And I'm not sure for that, client, what the benefit was to hold on to these things, but there was a having more, having access to this stuff. And so part of the philosophical here is what is wealth? And we have opinions personally, but also we've worked with a lot of clients of how they view wealth. And that idea of needing more or needing different is really pervasive in our society, partly because of social media, partly because of, before social media, we had Keeping Up with the Joneses. We had the people down the street to say, I want this. Why? Well, my neighbor has a boat. I want a boat.
Yeah. My neighbor moved to a higher end house. I want to move to a higher end house.
Yep. All the people at my office are doing this, that, the other thing. And it's that's kind of the treadmill of how do you keep up in kind of the early years. But what do you do when you're 70 or 80 and you have
even
all the
younger
money?
than that? I think, again, people are coming out of, let's say you had a military background or you work in public pensions. You have a public pension.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people below age 60 have fixed income.
Yeah.
They have a fairly decent rate of return. And if they've managed their debt, if they bought their house 20 years ago and managed their debt, their house is probably free and clear. So do you go out and sell that home and leverage and get a bigger home? And it seems to me that people are taking the arrows and stabbing themselves in a lot of cases. They're creating risk, and they're taking what they need and they're jeopardizing for what they want. They're jeopardizing their future.
Yeah.
Right.
There's some great illustration when it goes beyond what people do, but Bernie Madoff was a great example of that. It was in a book that Psychology of Money, we both read and give it to a number of clients. But a story of Bernie Madoff that before any of the scandal, before any of the fraud,
before he did the Ponzi scheme.
Yeah. He was making, I think they said 30 to 50 million through his business.
Right.
It was creating really great value, completely legitimate, completely real business. And the comment they made in the book is saying he just accepted that. That's more money than most people can even imagine.
Yeah, he would have been in the top 1% or greater as far as income and wealth.
Yeah, but he wanted more, and he wanted to do differently. So he kept pushing and pushing. And there's a few examples they give in the book of people who had more than enough. They would never be able to spend that, but they still wanted more. And so that pushed them into greed or illegal activity.
Yeah, I think the pride overcame their reality. And of course, we all know too much, you'll fall. You will absolutely, it will crush you at some point in time. And I still believe that those biblical principles are true when it comes to, pride goes before the fall. And we talk about it from a financial standpoint. We see people that this greed just gets way ahead. Yeah. And they make decisions that absolutely are horrible decisions. And anybody kind of standing back from it can see, they're lying, they're cheating, they're leveraging themselves, they're doing whatever they can to get what? More money. What does that mean to them? I don't know exactly what the driver is behind all that.
And there's some levels, you talk about the family who's starving and someone has to get bread. Okay, that's a different motivation.
It is.
But for someone who has plenty, their table is full, their family is full, but they still want another house. They still want more, and they're willing to make moral sacrifices to get there. It's a pride, it's a greed aspect. And I think as we talk about the good that money does, we talk about financial freedom, the quality of life, people having access to healthcare, generational wealth, people just say, I want my kids to not have to struggle like I did. I want them to inherit this. Those are all great. And even giving back to society, there's a number of people who are extremely charitable near the end of their lives because they have enough. I want to talk a little bit some of the concerns that we've touched on, but some of the concerns with having too much work, we find, especially as you think about inheriting this in the next generation, working is a good thing. Right. And if people have no motivation to work, you're kind of stealing from that next generation an ability to build their own confidence, right? To enjoy the work of their hands, to enjoy their.
You're talking about the children of people that are wealthy.
Children of people who are wealthy.
That's primarily who we're talking about.
It could be someone who's wealthy themselves. They just give up on pushing forward. But if someone inherits more than is useful, it can become unuseful, right? That they give up some of these great habits. Another piece is isolation. And this is one that was in this book. It's in other places that as people become more wealthy, often in our culture, they become more and more isolated. They're either concerned people will take from them or concerned.
They're more concerned about losing it. They've worked really hard to build a certain amount of wealth. And as long as their income is rolling in, as long as they're continuing to get the income, they're building asset. All of a sudden they retire. Now they are completely dependent upon what they've accumulated, right? In order to have it pay out an income. And anxiety, almost a sense of loss of control. Yeah. And it affects people oddly, I guess, is the best way to say it.
And even say someone had $10 million, a large amount of money that's invested, I could see, we've had clients talk about this, to say the market takes a dip and they say, I lost $300,000 today. And it feels like they lost. Well, no, you didn't lose $300,000. You have great assets that will continue to produce going forward. And the next day they might say, I made, $300,000 today. I can, and neither of those are accurate in the way they should be thinking about it to be healthy. Right. And it's interesting that aspect of financial freedom. I feel like people get to a certain amount of earnings or assets and they obtain financial freedom, but we've seen a number of clients who then keep going. They actually kind of lose their financial freedom. They lose an ability to not be focused on it or captivated by it. The Scrooge McDuck who wants to go swim in his money. That's right. That's a '90s reference. I don't know what that is.
No, it is. But I think I think people understand that. I mean, it's what makes you happy.
Yeah.
And I don't know of anybody that is continually pursuing wealth is happy.
Yeah,
I've not seen that.
Yeah,
I've not seen that.
And it's hard because I think a lot of people compare themselves to the uber wealthy, and we're dealing with people who are in our point. They live here. They live in our community. They're wealthy in this sense. And one of my favorite clients, I think he'll always probably be one of my favorite clients. But we did the planning, and he had enough money. He was going to be fine. And I've mentioned him on the radio before. But we did the inverse planning. He said, how much of this could I give away, either to my family or to my charities, and not run out of money? Not be dependent on someone else in my life, but how much of this could I just give away and not break my own plan? And it was wonderful planning because we flipped the whole thing around and said, okay, you could give away this amount of money, every year, or you can make one big lump sum. But his view was that I don't need to die with any of this. I don't need to give this to the next generation in large sums. I'd rather give it to him now. And for him, wealth was called a gift. He had all the freedom in the world.
He saw how lucky he was from a wealth standpoint.
Yeah.
I mean, he saw that he didn't deserve any of this, but my goodness, look how wealthy, look at how lucky I am.
Yeah. He's a frugal person who worked for many years and enjoyed what he did for a job. And so in that, I think there's an element, and this is kind of the philosophical part of the conversation, I think, is what does wealth mean to you? Is it keeping score? Is it a way to...
Are you competitive?
Is it a competitive thing? Is it a way that you fund opportunity for yourself and others? Is it freedom? Another part that people often will talk about is what do you owe to society? And owe is, I think, probably the wrong word here. What's the opportunity that you could contribute to society? Because us in America, we've grown up with infrastructure in our cities. Anyone who owns a business, getting power to the building and having it be consistent probably wasn't their biggest concern. It's a concern time, but not the biggest. The military that's protected our shores, that we've not been invaded and companies shut down. There's an element there that some people want to give back and say, I want to move forward. Others don't. There's part of that. Yeah,
it's interesting. I just finished the biography for Benjamin Franklin.
Mm.
And Benjamin Franklin wasn't necessarily religious. He was, I would say the predominant thing was he was very altruistic. He saw society as benefiting. So a lot of things that he invented, a lot of things that he was very instrumental, for example, the lightning rod was, I didn't realize, but how critical that invention was at that time. Churches, the steeples in churches were typically the highest, point in a town or a city, and the bell ringers apparently were at great risk. They'd go up there, and the lightning would hit those things and kill them. And so he invented, he discovered electricity, but he also discovered how to conduct it, creating these lightning rods, and helped install them in churches and high-end buildings. He received virtually zero economic benefit from that. He gave away all of his knowledge because he saw that as beneficial to mankind.
Yeah.
Same thing with the Franklin stove. I mean, we put his name to it. He didn't patent it. He didn't open up a manufacturing plant to make these things and to get better.
Yeah.
He saw it as a benefit to mankind. And for that, he didn't die super wealthy, but he died, he wanted just enough money to do what he wanted to do.
Right? Yeah. When we've talked about business owners and people like the Hershey Company, through the Depression, there was a whole city that was built up for workers. And, the owners of the Hershey family, they had them building all sorts of things just to keep them in a job so they could support their family. They could have shut everything down and said, I'm going to hold on to my wealth and, I'm not going to share this. But there's all sorts of aspects of, giving back to society. There's giving back to your own employees. And I think it doesn't have to all be altruistic, but I think there is even a selfish view of this to say, just having more won't necessarily make you happier.
Right.
Consuming more, eating finer foods or going on more trips won't necessarily make you happier, but certain things will. There was a good article, I think it was a Wall Street Journal years ago, but it said, money can't buy you happiness. It said, yes, it can. You're just doing it wrong. And it was an experiment about people giving money away or
Right.
using money and what they're spending their money on, and spending it on experiences versus just having it. And so I think it's a good moment for, we do it with our clients on a regular basis, but anyone to take a hard look at, what really adds value to their life, their family's lives, and their community, and how can they get to be a part of that?
Yeah, I mean, our job as financial planners is to create, to some degree, balance in a client's life. And we've made a comment to many clients is that we're not here just to help you accumulate more and more money, more and more assets.
Mm-hmm.
Our job is to find out what it is that you need in order to have a good outcome financially. And we come out with that target rate of return. You don't need to take unusual risk continually to continue to maintain and to do the things that you want to do in your life. So therefore, it comes down to what's really in the heart of the individual and what we're trying to help them achieve in their life, right?
Yeah, when you think of wealth management, it's not, wealth. Part of it is your money. Part of it is how you experience the world. Your health even is, for a lot of people as they get older, that's the highest wealth they have is staying healthy. And I think as they engage with their families, engage with their communities, and just taking enjoyment out of their life. And for me, that's part of it. That's part of the planning that we do. And so I think it's a good moment for everyone to think, where are you headed and why?
Right.
If and especially if people they're going to inherit, say $5 million or something from a previous generation. What's that for? Like if you didn't need it day one, what could you do with it? How could you use that to create a benefit for you and your family and potentially even your community?
Yeah, more isn't necessarily better, but what it is if you've been given something that is more than what you need, the question is, what is your responsibility to it? And there's a lot of, we could go down a lot of different requirements, but at the end of the day, you're not going to take any of this with you.
Yeah.
There is no, hurts behind the coffin.
Yeah, right.
There's no
rental car. Yeah, going back. Yeah,
So,
that's great. Well, if you missed any part of this episode, you can go to our website, tricorderadvisors.com. We have all our episodes posted there. You can also find us on YouTube.
Until next week, folks, may you grow in wisdom and knowledge. Thank you for listening.